It is the 27th day of the month of Tishrei, and Be'ezra Mizbarach, we have the schus of learning together Maseches Pesachim, Daf Mem Vav, Amud Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. Zayin Amud Aleph. We are starting with the last three lines, the last three words. On Mem Vav Amud Beis, the Gemara is in the middle of discussion between Rabba and Rav Chisda. And there are a number of axes of the machloksim between them. Primarily, it starts off with the opinion of Rabba, who says that we have a principle called Hoil. Hoil, the demon Klai Archim, in case guests would arrive, it is permissible for me to bake on Yom Tov for Shabbos, and that is a fundamental principle in the Torah that Hoil exists, that I would be allowed to bake from Shabbos to Yom Tov. And according to Rav Chisda, there is no such argument. And the reason that you can bake from Shabbos to Yom Tov is because there is no Isur whatsoever of baking from Shabbos to Yom Tov. It is only a Gzerim in the Rabbanan, and therefore the Rabbanan told you the way of getting around that. In the case of needing to bake from or to cook from erev from Yom Tov to Shabbos, meaning from erev Shabbos to Shabbos, and that is called an erev tavshil. And we've seen a number of attempts to disprove from one to the other. And at the bottom of Memvav Beis, the Gemara is going to levy the following argument by Rabbah against Rav Chisda. So Rabbah disagrees with Rav Chisda. He says to him, take a look at the following Mishnah. Lechem Apanim, with regards to the Lechem Apanim, which was put on the Shulchan in the Beis HaMikdash, with regards to Lechem Apanim at the top of Mem Zayin Amud Aleph, Nechal L'Tishla Asar La'achad Asar, is either eaten on the 9th, 10th, or 11th day after it is baked. How does that work out? So, and Lo Pachas Lo Yosef, no more and no less. There is never a case that will be eaten sooner than the 9th day or after the 11th day. Ketzad, how does it work out? Kedarkai, normatively, Letitia, it is eaten on the 9th day, including the day that it is eaten and the day that it is baked. Important just to keep in mind that, think about bris milah, that if a baby is born on an Erev Shabbos, the bris is on the 8th day, which is Erev Shabbos, which means, never le Erev Shabbos, if the bread is baked on Erev Shabbos, as it normatively is, nechal b'Shabbos, then it would be eaten on the following Shabbos, the subsequent Shabbos, because the Lechem Apanim sits there the entire week. It is switched out on Shabbos. It's baked Erev Shabbos, and then they would push out the old loaves with the new loaves, because the Lechem Tamid, Lechem Apanim is Tamid Lifnei Hashem. It's always there in front of Hashem, and therefore it was a week later that it was eaten on Shabbos, which means it's baked on Erev Shabbos. It's eaten on Shabbos. That is the 9th day, and that is the normal way of eating it. However, Chal Yom Tov liyos b'Erev Shabbos, but if Yom Tov falls out on an Erev Shabbos, Nechal Shabbos la'asara, then it is eaten Yom Tov. It's not baked on Yom Tov. It has to be baked on the day beforehand, which would have been the Thursday, and then it's going to be eaten on Shabbos, which would be the 10th day, meaning the subsequent Shabbos will be the 10th day. And in a situation where you have a 3-day Yom Tov in Yerushalayim, which could only ever possibly happen with Shnei Yom Tovim Shel Rosh Hashanah, 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, which would be on Thursday and then Friday and then Shabbos, then the Lechem Apanim had to have been baked on the Wednesday beforehand. Nechal Shabbos la'achad asar means that the Shabbos that it's eaten is the 11th day. Lefi, says the Mishnah, because the baking of the Lechem Apanim does not override the chiyuv of Shabbos, of not cooking and baking on Shabbos, and neither does it push away the obligation, the prohibition of cooking and baking on Shabbos and Yom Tov, shelo letzarech. Says Rabba V'i Amar Tzorchei Shabbos Nasim Yom Tov, and if you believe that the Tzorchei Shabbos, you Rav Chisda believe that Tzorchei Shabbos are okay, are totally fine to do on an Erev Shabbos, which happens to be a Yom Tov, Nasim B'Yom Tov, Amay Lo Dachei Yom Tov, then why was it not pushed off? Meaning, why doesn't it push off Yom Tov? Meaning, why can you not bake this on Yom Tov for Shabbos Amarle, so he says, you're 100% right. You are 100% right that is true. You could do that. But Shvus Krova Hitiru, the Rabbanan allowed a Shvus Krova, means that they allowed you to make an Erev Tavshilin to be able to bake from today Erev Shabbos to tomorrow Shabbos. If today is a Yom Tov, Erev Shabbos is a Yom Tov, they allowed you to bake with an Erev Tavshilin from Yom Tov to Shabbos. But to bake on this Erev Shabbos, which is a Yom Tov, for next Shabbos, lo yitiru. There, the Rabbanan did not allow you to do so, but it's true that on a fundamental level, such a thing would be permissible. Says the Gemara, Ul Rabbi Gamliel da Amar Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Hasgan, but according to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, who said in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Hasgan, the son of Rabbi Chanan Niskan Ka'anim, who we saw a lot of in the first parak, he said, Doiche es Yom Tov, it does push off Yom Tov, meaning it does override Yom Tov. Ve'ena doiche es Yom Tzom, but it doesn't push off Yom Kippur. What Reb Chisda could you possibly say? It seems to be that according to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, that said in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Rabbi Chananya Skana Ka'anim, that you were allowed to do this. So he says Rav Chisda, I'll tell you what's going on. This is the machlokes. The machlokes is whether or not they allowed you to override a shvus rechoika, meaning a shvus krova hitira. Everybody agrees that they allowed you to make to violate a shvus krova with an erev tavshil. Shvus rechoika lo hitira, but a far off shvus they did not allow you to do. Ma'asavar, and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, no, shvus rechoika I mean that they also allowed you to do that. Either which way, Rabbah, none of this proves your point that there is a principle of hol, or that there is an isur of baking from Yom Tov to Shabbos on a level of deraisa. Says the Gemara, Mativ Rav Mari. Rav Mari argued the following: Shtei halechem. With regards to the shtei halechem is not the same thing as the lechem apanim. The shtei halechem was the two challahs that were made on Shavuos. That's the only karban that the tzibur would bring that was made out of chametz. The other, which was a karban yachid, is the karban tail. It's the only time that you ever have chametz on the mizbeach. But with regards to the shtei halechem, says the Gemara, Rav Mari is quoting, Enim ne'achalos, they are not eaten except in the following circumstances: le'pachas mishnayim, no less than 2 days after baking, v'le'yoser al shlosha, and certainly no more than 3. So it's either on the second day or the third day. Ketzah, how does this work out? Nefas erev Yom Tov, they are baked on erev Shavuos. Ne'achalos the Yom Tov lishnayim, and then they are eaten on the second day, meaning erev Yom Tov is day 1, Yom Tov is day 2. Chal Yom Tov lias achar Shabbos. But what would happen if Shavuos was on a Motzei Shabbos? Shavuos fell out on a Motzei Shabbos, so then how do you make the shtei halechem? So ne'achalos the Yom Tov l'shloisha, then it's eaten on this Sunday of Shavuos. It's eaten on the Sunday of Shavuos, and that would be the third day because it's baked on Friday, Shabbos, Sunday. Those are your 3 days. Why? Because you cannot bake the shtei halechem neither on the Shabbos, nor could you bake it on Yom Tov itself, on Shavuos itself. Why not? Keep that in mind. And if you, Rav Chisda, hold that tzorchei Shabbos on Nasim Yom Tov, that you could bake on a level of deraisa on an erev Shabbos, which is a Yom Tov, you could bake on Yom Tov for Shabbos on a level of deraisa. Hashta the Shabbos be Yom Tov shari. It tells you that to bake for Shabbos on Yom Tov it's permissible. The Yom Tov be Yom Tov mibaye. How could you even have a question? Of course, you'd be allowed to bake from Yom Tov for Yom Tov. How could you ever possibly say that would be aser? Says Rav Chisda, no. Shani Hassan, that's different. The Amar Kra, the Torah there says, Lachem, you can bake for you. Lachem v'lo legvaya. But you don't have the right to bake for the Mizbeach. Meaning, the Torah says, Hu levada yaseh lachem, you're allowed to do whatever you need to do for you. But that's not for you. That's for the Mizbeach. It's true that you're going to eat it, but the only reason that you are going to eat it is because you have to eat it. That's also a mitzvah. That's the mitzvah of achila of kachim. Says the Gemara, Ule Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Now, further question for Rabbi Chisda, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, the Amar Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Asgan. Once again, we have this tradition going back all the way to the times of the Beis Hamikdash. Doiches Yamtiv, that it is going to overrule Yamtiv. You can bake the lechem upon him. That is that you can bake the shtei lechem on Yamtiv itself. Ma'iklemema, what are you going to say? What are you going to say? So he says, Savah like Abba Shol. He holds like Abba Shol. The Amar, he says, Lachem, for you. Lachem v'lo lenachem. No. Lachem tells you that you are allowed to make food for you, meaning for Jews. Lachem v'lo lenachem, you're not allowed to make for non-Jews. And that is important to know. We pass on this halacha l'maisa, that if you have you can invite a non-Jew for a Shabbos meal. That's not a problem. But to invite a non-Jew for a Yom Tov meal, that's a big problem. Because if the non-Jew says, hey, by the way, you're making some steaks on the grill, it's Yom Tov, you're allowed to, you mind making an extra one for me? You're not allowed to do that for him. That's an issue deraisa. Lachem, for you, you're not allowed to do for a non-Jew. Shalach le Rav Chisda le Rabbi. Rav Chisda sends to Rabbi the following question: Biyad Rav Acha bar Rav Huna, in the hands of Rav Acha bar Rav Huna, mi amrin hoil. Did we already say this big svara that you've been saying of hoil? V'atanan, don't we have a Mishnah that says yesh charish telem echad? There's somebody that could make that could to plow one furrow. V'chayavim ala mishum shmona lavim, and he could violate 8 different lavim. This is a lot of isurim in one action. Let's count them up. What are these 8 lavim that you could violate? They are hacharish b'shar v'cham. If you plow with an ox and a donkey together, so it's one plow, meaning you hooked up an ox and a donkey together. That's an isderaisa of b'shar v'cham. That's number 1. V'heim mukdashim, and both of them are kachim. V'kilayim b'kerem. And you are not just stump plowing. What you are plowing is kilayim in a vineyard, meaning grapes and grain together. That's the vineyard that you are, the furrow that you are plowing. Ushvias, and it's a shmita. V'yamtiv, and it is yamtiv. Koyin, and he's a koyin. V'nazir, and he's a nazir. A beis hatuma, and the field that he's plowing is a beis hatuma, meaning that there's some tumas mesa somewhere there that he is not allowed to be. These are a lot of isurim. Says Rav Chisda through his letter to Rav Huna, or his messenger to Rav Huna, v'yamrin hoil, and if we believe hoil as you believe, Rabba, acharish lo lichayv, then why would he be liable for plowing, meaning for the ma'isa of plowing on Yom Tov? Since plowing the field is not a fundamental issur on Yom Tov, since if you shecht an animal, if you shecht a tzipor, if you shecht a bird on Yom Tov, you need to cover the blood of that bird with earth, and to dig a hole in order to cover that blood is permissible on Yom Tov. And if we believe the principle of hoil, as you, Rabbi, believe the principle of hoil, then plowing that field should not be one of these 8 isurim. It should knock it down to 7. And Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, we will continue with the answer to that question on Mem Zayin Amud Beis tomorrow morning. Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, back to 6:15 a.m. Looking forward, please God, to seeing everybody there in person at BRS West before Shachris at 6:45. And looking forward to learning with you then. Have a beautiful evening.